All right, Saverio, I'm super excited to welcome you onto the show. For all the listeners out there, Saverio and I met 3 or 4 years ago in a writing group, and of I think there were maybe 150 people kind of in that group, and of all of them, Saverio was kind of the one that I latched onto and wouldn't let him get away from me. And I hit him up for advice all the time, and have just loved kind of following along as his business has grown. So.
I'm Amy Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
You'll do a better job of introducing yourself and saying exactly what you do. So Saverio, why don't you tell the folks who you are and what you do?
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for having me. And likewise, it's been great meeting you during the online course, which we can touch on later if you like. It was quite a transformative experience in a very particular time. So I'm Saverio. I run Atelier Avenue, which is a boutique e-commerce and digital transformation, data-driven consultancy firm. I've been lucky enough to spend the last 20 years of my life working on things that I love, so data, digital, e-commerce, and I've lucky enough to do so by being shoulder to shoulder with some of the finest brands and retailers and investors in the space. So I've loved doing it. I still love doing it, and I've started doing that because I really realized after many years on client side, working first for Ferrari Automotive back in Italy, and then moved on to London in luxury retail in the beauty space. I just realized there was a better way to help brands and retailers and players in the space by taking away conflicts of interest and align better objectives and incentives, and just have more fun, because I get bored fast. So working with lots of great brands doesn't just pay the bills, but also feeds the curiosity monster that basically lives in me at all times.
I love it. And yeah, the brands you've worked with would be a dream list for anyone, right? You've worked with Moet and LVMH. You've worked with L'Oreal. I think Marc Jacobs, Diageo. You mentioned Ferrari. As you kind of see, I think we've kind of hit a big inflection point this year, right? With AI is coming out in a whole new way. Gen Z is becoming a bigger and bigger piece of the market. We've kind of been through this tumultuous time of tariffs and uncertainty there, economic uncertainty. Can you kind of paint a picture of the landscape that you're seeing in a DTC as a whole, but especially kind of on that luxury and premium side?
For sure. What you painted are like the latest, biggest shifts, obviously, that everyone is struggling with and trying to react to, which only went to add on top of an already shaky ground for D2C brands. D2C is being my love from day one. It's one of the, possibly the part of living online that really caught my attention and my interest and my passion over the years. So I'm D2C through and through, but I was never dogmatic about it. And I think 2025 was the year where everyone eventually saw 2024, 2025 really saw abandoning the dogmas and the ideologies, and really realizing how important survival is to be able to live to fight another day. And so we, in the last few years, we've all seen going from hype to hangover. And I think right now we're in the, possibly the worst moment of the hangover, where the cheap ads are a long lost memory, where all the abundant VC cash there was sloshing around just isn't there anymore, hasn't been there anymore for a while. And so in this context, I always liked Warren Buffett's quote of "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked." And gosh, we've seen quite a few naked brands in that sense. So as I see the scenario, I see at the same time the realistically the gigantic challenges that D2C have, and then I'd like to make a distinction between newer, younger D2C brands and businesses versus more established, whether vertical brands or of course retailers is a different game. But like the reality of the complexity of dealing with the current situation and making their P&L work and feeding their growth in a constructive way, in a realistic way. And on there, and lots of challenges there that we can talk about. But then on the other side, call me, Mr. Brightside, but like I'm really see the glass half full of the opportunities that AI is bringing into the equation to really improve the performance, improve the workflows, improve the impact that these brands can really have, which is great and everything, but it comes with its own challenges because it's not a plug and play, and we can talk a lot more about that. But clearly, we've seen a disillusionment around the purest form of D2C, with brands and the icons of D2C going from the dogma to realizing that either omnichannel or bust, and therefore you start seeing your Pelotons on Amazon, your Allbirds on third-party distributors, and plenty of beauty brands that were either, and we work a lot in beauty, so I'm quite close to that space as well as to the premium and luxury. We've seen also influencer founded brands with very strong ownership of their own audience, obviously due to the nature of how they were founded, realizing that there was kind of a glass ceiling to the power that D2C could bring to their growth, and had to, come to terms with omnichannel distribution. So therefore going on their third-party retailers and so, which is not bad at all, which is absolutely not bad at all, and realizing that D2C is a channel, a very, very, very important channel, for all the reasons that we know, owning the relationship, owning the data, God knows how important all that is about our customers. But at the same time, realizing that growth is not doesn't have only one shape. What gets lost a lot in that kind of switch is the understanding of how the value proposition of a D2C brand should evolve and change once you start being present with either the exact same SKUs or a subset of your SKUs also on large distribution third-party retailers, whether that be Amazon or Sephora or Ulta Beauty or you name it. And that requires a lot of thinking.
A couple of questions on that, because that's very similar to what I've seen in do you think the necessity to go to omnichannel or to seek out some of these third-party retailers is because of just an upper limit to what the growth you can have through your own D2C site, or is it because there have been so many new entrants into the space that the market's just getting kind of more competitive and more saturated, or sort of what is causing the need for these brands to kind of abandon the dogma, as you were saying, of being pure D2C and accepting that we still have to do retail. We still have to try and figure out whether it's owned stores or third-party stores or third-party marketplaces or all these other channels.
I would say it's all of the above. And I would add a third reason as well. So yes, it is getting more crowded, and therefore you gotta stand out and you gotta leverage whatever other channel you have to catch the attention and get that first purchase. Hopefully the product is good, so at least the first purchase gets you in the consideration set for next repeated purchases, and you can start building an LTV. And a bit of a plateau of the growth that D2C can provide. But the reality is also, I see a third factor, which is that plateau isn't just a maximum addressable market through D2C that has been hit, but it's also a maximum a level of, if you will, I'll go as far as say bravery by the brand in terms of risks that they're willing to take in evolving their D2C proposition. Because it's very easy, as you know very well, to go, sorry, it's not very easy at all. It is easier to go from 1 to 10 to 10 to 20, but it's a lot harder to go from 20 to 100, from 100 to 500, right? Whether that be millions or tens of or thousands of customers. And that is because the type of proposition that you offer your consumers on your D2C, if that remains the same or kind of similar despite launching new products, you're not really staying on top of standing out versus your competitors. So it's kind of a third point that is a blur between the first two, where yes, the competition raises the level of what's expected by your brand. Therefore, if you don't keep being innovative, and innovative includes content, includes the service that you provide, includes all the elements of your value proposition, product, obviously. But it also it requires a certain degree of courage by the leaders of the brand in saying, okay, let's switch up the way we've been doing it up until now in a way that we don't just go after growth with a category extension. Let's go after growth by try to repeat in a new try to bring the same energy that we brought at the beginning to catch everyone's attention, but in a different shape and form, so that we can actually continue catch that attention in a ever noisier kind of environment, especially with AI that now allows everybody to pretty much level the playing field a lot more from a creative output and so on.
Yeah, that's a great segue, because when you're talking about the bravery and kind of innovation and pushing the ball downfield, I remember 10 years ago, we saw so much more experimentation and novelty in kind of what is a user experience going to be like on our store, right? Like, it was a lot more like, how could we make this this customized builder? How can we make this interactive? How can we do all these truly like unique and novel things where we thought, hey, we're bringing this online, we can have this amazing experience. And it does feel like in the last 3-4 years, we've sort of started moving towards a consistent experience across almost every e-commerce store online, right? And like, I think part of that's, Shopify has become the winner. Everything's been, you could argue everything's been tested and optimized to the end of optimization, but it does feel like we've kind of lost the novelty and fun factor that we used to be like really pushing for. I guess, first of all, have you seen that? Do you agree that that's true? And second of all, is that part of the bravery you're talking about, or is that sort of adjacent and you're talking more about just even from an audience and product perspective?
100%. I could not agree more. That's exactly it. There's a there's been I think we all can see it, not just as players and experts in the field, but also just as consumers. We can see it. There's been a trend of de-risking the investments, and so the push. I think it's a few things that are connected. I'll try to answer your question the best possible way. One part of it is a general, because of the type of how most of these D2C brands are financed, i.e., VC backing for the ones in high growth, at least, a certain kind of expectations as to the growth, and as a consequence, an aversion to risk. So the new entrant who is independent and new kids on the block who want to stand out are much more willing to take risks, being in your face, and be taking risks with the products, taking risks with the way they communicate, taking risks with the way they design their website, and not make it necessarily a cookie cutter from anything else. And at the same time, and this phenomenon, I think you can see it in other domains as well. You can see it in movies. Like if you look at movies over the last 10 years, 15 years, it's been sequels or adaptations of IP that's already existing. And you see mostly the same stars appearing because the star power drives that kind of audience. And so you de-risk the investment of the studios. In a very similar way, they're being trying to de-risk the the brands, whether it's apparel, whether it's beauty, whether it's F&B. The general trend has been there, yes, 100%. On the other hand, on the UX point of view of the websites, yes, there's definitely a death by template kind of a phenomenon that's been happening. Some brands have still been able to, add their own, be brave enough, if we can even use that word, to take a bit more of a risk, so to speak, or at least being willing to stand out, without throwing away, what the customer expects, and therefore killing your conversion rate on site. Because if you start putting your add to basket in the bottom left corner, you're good luck. You're gonna be different, but good luck being different like that. And you can only pull off those extreme kind of positioning, extreme kind of customer experiences if there is such an insane hype for your brand. And so I always think back at the Balenciaga website of probably 4 or 5 years ago that pretty much looked like an ugly Excel file. That's what it was. It was just like cells, and then you click and you have a text link. And if you're lucky, after 5 clicks, you get on a product page. But you can pull that off because there's the line outside, because there is so much desire. Whether or not you like the brand, as long as there is the line out of the door and the desire for the brand is there, then you can pull off whatever gimmick you want to be cool and be relevant within and stand out as an experience. And so I think a lot of that kind of resistance to risk avoidance in a way, as now is coming back with interest, and people are paying that with interest. And so, what was it, Zuckerberg, who said, the riskiest thing you can do is to take no risk. I think it's very, very valid. And therefore, right now, you can only bombard so much your email database to squeeze the cash out of it. You can only push your promotions so much to hit your monthly target or your quarterly target and so on. But in fact, what you're doing is you're borrowing money from yourself in the future, right? You know this as well as I do. And so that element is an element that there's an element of a maturity and understanding that is there at the I call it an e-commerce at the D2C trading floor, like where you recom managers and your media buyers and like the guys and the girls who do the job every day, they get that. That hasn't permeated enough. That understanding hasn't permeated enough at the boardroom level, with obvious exceptions, obviously, and it hasn't permeated enough at an investor level either. And so sometimes you'll find people who get it, but then yes, nevertheless, we gotta hit this target, and because of that or the other reason. And so it's coming back with a vengeance. It's coming back. Those are interests that need to be paid. Someone has to pay that bill, and so they've lost that strength. And I know I'm generalizing a lot, so I'm just a big average, obviously, a blanket statement. But I think we've lost the courage and capacity to create a desire. Because to create a desire, you got to be innovative, you got to be interesting, you got to be in the culture, and so on. And so, yeah.
Part of what that makes me think about is as so many brands have come into the D2C world, and there's been this evolution of the platforms you're going to use, that we tried a lot of things, right? Everyone tried Twitter ads 5 years ago and got zero traffic from it, right? And so kind of the community landed on Meta and said, this is the channel that works for pretty much every product, every vertical. If you're selling e-commerce, Meta is going to work for you, right? And so there's still people who can be very successful with Google. And I think that's, an add-on for most teams is once they kind of reach a local maxima with Meta, they start adding in Google and YouTube. Maybe they're leaning into TikTok and TikTok Shop, but Meta really is the workhorse. And so you mentioned kind of early on when we were talking about the headwinds, ad costs have been going up. We know that people costs are not insignificant. We know that margins can be tight. We know that there can be massive seasonality and uncertainty around your market. We know that costs are going up from tariffs. You talk about investor requirements. And so as Meta's become more competitive, as it's become the place where everyone is, it feels like a lot of brands have sort of just been like checking the box, but also putting like the requirements on Meta now are so much on the creative side, right? Like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it was all about targeting and how can I figure out the right audience. And that was like 80% of my job, was trying to figure out these small little audience groups. Now it's so much on the creative side and so much on the output side. Is that kind of what the limiting factor has been, of like all your creativity has been kind of stuffed into just coming up with a better Meta ad that's going to last for a couple days or weeks, and then so your team just kind of lives this loop of trying to figure out how to get a little bit more out of Meta, or I don't think we can say that the talent has disappeared from D2C, and so is it just pressure, or is it sort of these limitations and requirements to just crank out content now?
It is the pressure for sure. The talent, oh my God, there is so much amazing talent in D2C. I think some of the most stimulating, intellectually stimulating and exciting and a bit crazy people that I know are in D2C. And I love that. It's a great scene. I think it's a brilliant scene. But yes, targeting is gone. Those were the good days. We can raise the glass to that, but we can't bring it back. Creative is obviously, the center of the attention. But I think there's we need to, I'd like we should take a step back. So yes, if you want to grow a brand, you gotta look at, as you know well, you gotta existing demand. So make sure you capture your existing demand, and Google is great at that for now. But ChatGPT and the LLMs are taking over there. But again, it's capturing existing demand. And then there is creating demand, which we go back to that, create that desire and that really people wanting your product, really wanting your brand and so on. And that's your top of the funnel kind of exercise where you interrupt your consumers and get your message in front of their eyes. And there's nothing better than Meta. And in a way, depending on the category, TikTok, absolutely fantastic for that as well. But I think we need to take a step back. And I think a part of that hangover that we are living today, the brands, DTC brands are living today, is this fact of this heavy reliance on the paid media. And the heavy reliance on paid media is kind of this sin that has been alimented and pushed by a certain type of investors. And I also don't want to put all the investors in the same bucket because I'm lucky enough to work with some really smart and really switched on investors that get it. But the pressure to deliver a certain type of growth within a certain type of time frame forced that push on the paid media channels beef ahead of time. And when I mean ahead of time is before a brand has managed to crack a profitable, at the customer level, a profitable customer engine, so to speak. So once you've figured out that once you've optimized your P&L for a customer profitable bottom line, so to speak, where you really have created this engine of organic acquisition and LTV growth and so on and so forth, well, that is something that's worth amplifying with paid media. And this is as banal as it can get. There's not an original thought. It's something you'll hear other thousands of people saying the same thing. But going from saying it and actually executing on it is a different ballgame. And so a lot of these brands are too impatient to be able to do that. No longer than yesterday, but there are brands that do that are doing it the right way. No longer than yesterday, I was talking with the president, a good friend of mine of a great, fast-growing beauty brand, a premium beauty brand, who just described this perfect kind of ecosystem where they've got just a handful of SKUs. Their organic growth is incredible. They worked on really grassroots type of organic growth. And how much they're spending on paid media is almost negligible. Now, we both know that you don't want to ignore paid media. You want to use it, you want to make the most of it, but you don't want it to become a drug, whereby all you're doing is basically taking money from your VC and giving it to Zuckerberg, right? It's that's what's happening. It's kind of like now, like with investors in Nvidia, right? Like taking the investments and they're just giving them over to Jensen. But there's a balance there, and there's a sequence of events until you've cracked that engine of experience that never stops. I mean, right? You have to keep evolving it, like we were saying earlier. But until you've cracked that, adding an amplification and adding large investments in paid media, again, all it does is it's letting you borrow money from your future business, because that lifetime value is not going to look anything like your organic customers. And that's fine if the relative proportion of that is of a certain type. If your new customer acquisition relies only or mostly heavily on paid media, any fluctuation of CPM, any fluctuation of product, and we've seen in the last couple of months that, all hell broke loose on Meta platforms, it just makes your business too very fragile and you're overexposed. So you want to be exposed, but you don't want to be overexposed. I guess that's the That's the bottom line. And the other element of it is, how are we thinking through retention and that LTV building in a way that is thoughtful, that isn't just spraying and praying a bunch of triggered emails on the back of some basic interactions, which again is a death by template, like for Shopify storefronts. But being more thoughtful in product journeys and meaningful distribution and service and value proposition at large, and also using the insights that you get from your CRM and customer cohorts back into your acquisition efforts. So how do I get more of those customers that are really worth the investment, not just in paid media, but also in time and effort of my business?
And so you used a phrase when we were talking earlier, data rich but insights poor, and that's sort of what I'm hearing here. Is the beautiful thing about a D2C brand or your e-commerce store, if you were omnichannel, is that you have so much data, and the limitation is really the time you put to analyzing that data, and then the ability, both through skill and intuition, to draw insights from that. So can you talk a little bit about how you're seeing successful brands overcome that stagnation, and kind of what that problem set is, and why some brands struggle with figuring out the insight piece of it?
The insight piece is one of the things that I'm the most passionate about. Marketers are drowning in numbers. If I remember correctly, they say there's like 72% of business leaders say that the sheer volume of the data they have collected and they have available has actually paralyzed their decision making instead than enabling it. And so there's been a bit of a how can I say, kind of business has been a bit data bulimic, if you pass me the crazy comparison. But we have lots of data from all kinds of sources, but the ability to translate that data into insights that then allow for better and faster decision making, just there's a huge gap there. There's a huge gap. And there's a gap in, I believe, it's kind of like when you use AI, you only get an output that's as good as your prompt, right? So if you don't know what to ask, which is why, incidentally, I believe that actually AI is going to make us a lot smarter than some doomers believe, that it's going to make us more stupid, because it's going to force us to formulate our thoughts and our requests in a more structured way, as opposed to, hey, you junior or whatever, go figure this out. Well, that doesn't work like that. And so that faster loop, I think, is going to make us smarter. But let me go back to your question. So we've all been wrestling with unusable dashboards or unusable reports, and we've seen like executive teams, but at all level, from middle management to board level and whatnot, adjusting dashboards and reports and wrestling with them a million times. Now, obviously, there's and hardly ever landing on a decision-making framework, or again, with the obvious exceptions of the very structured, data-driven businesses. But like, you hardly ever end up with a really structured decision-making framework that is repeatable. And so there's a lot of reinventing the wheel. I keep seeing. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with the level of reports and dashboards that executives get to see, because what they're missing, they're getting the what, they hardly ever get the so what, but in some cases they do get the so what, meaning, okay, I've got the data, but this is what it means. And then what they most often the not miss is the then what. It's like, what's the action? What am I supposed to do with it? What is the next step? Now, that it cannot be only the responsibility of your analyst or data scientist. It cannot just be the responsibility of whoever is the manager looking after that part of the business. But there has to be a responsibility and accountability by the more senior leaders as well to understand how to put those insights, those so what, into then what, into action and decisions. And so I always say, if you're not happy with your dashboard, if you're not happy with your reports that you're looking at, you should not get upset with the dashboard itself or with the people who build the dashboard. You should kind of take accountability on the fact that that dashboard is a mirror reflecting the clarity of your own thinking to yourself. And if that isn't clear, and if you're not able to articulate what is it that you're after, then it's the issues at the source. And so that insight piece, the weakest link of that chain is that understanding of what am I supposed to do with this insight. And I see it very much, and this is, by the way, key part of what we do with our clients. We help them improving their decision making both with our engagements, with the coaching I do to senior execs and founders. It's like just helping them understand that a lot of what they're looking at is unnecessary. And so I say you need to Marie Kondo your KPIs, right? Just only keep what sparks joy, or in other words, was actually useful, and really focus on the context, which I think is the ultimate C word in this day and age when it comes to data. The context is missing. And because if you don't have the context, you don't have insights. And without a clear decision-making framework, you cannot turn insights into deliberate plans and actions. And if you cannot be deliberate, then it's not really you who's driving your business. And so you're kind of going with the like a boat in the open sea. You're going with the current, and that's not great.
Saverio, those last 2 minutes or 3 minutes were absolutely magical. I wrote down, I was just like constantly just typing things out in my notes over here. So maybe that's where we wrap this one, and we'll have to have you back a second time, because I think we have a lot more to go from there. But to wrap that up, I love the idea of Marie Kondoing your dashboards and making sure it goes from so what to then what, where it's not just the end state of analysis isn't a graph. The end state is what action are we going to take because of this data point or this graph or this trend or whatever you're seeing in your analysis. I absolutely love that. Saverio, for people who want to work with you, to learn more from you, to follow along with you, how can people best get in touch with you, best find you, all that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can check out my firm's website, atelierAvenue.com, or my personal blog where I rant about all these things on SaverioBianchi.com.
Perfect. We'll link all those in the show notes. Saverio, it was so great catching up with you again and learning from you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.